people. Let's go back to Canberra now, and joining us live is the Victorian Liberal MP Tim Wilson. Tim, let's start off with Victoria and the escalating numbers once again when it comes to COVID. I mean, is this proof that even short, sharp lockdowns aren't enough for Delta?
Well, what's clear is that Delta is the game changer and that the strategies we used for the Alpha variant last year simply aren't going to work. So the idea that we engage in lockdowns as a way of stopping Delta seems to me increasingly to be a form of Delta denialism. We need to face some realities. Yes, we want to give our hospital system time to cope and manage with the situation, but the most critical and important thing is that Australians go out, and Victorians in particular, go out and get vaccinated because that's going to be your best armour against the risks of the Delta strain. So what would be your message to the Premier here? I mean, he's going to have to work out a map out, and at least Dan Andrews is on a so-called unity ticket with Gladys Berejiklian here and wanting to ease restrictions once you hit those magical vaccine numbers. So what do you do until that point? Well, people need to be able to plan their lives with confidence. If you speak to Victorians on the ground, I'm sure it's the same for people in New South Wales. They don't know what they're doing the next day. They're sitting on edge from press conference to press conference from the Premier. I'm heartened to see that ministers are talking about easing some restrictions, not ones that are going to lead to a rapid spread of the virus, but ones that are simply going to enable people to plan out their lives so they can make simple choices and simple decisions to support them and their families. And so I think that's where we need to get to. And if they're going to continue the lockdown through to what increasingly seems like the end of the year. Yeah, that does seem to be the case. But I mean, how much more can Victoria take? You've been in lockdown for 211 days now. Yeah, Victorians are at their breaking point, and that's why if the Premier had the insight to offer a clear plan around the level of restrictions so people could make decisions about their lives, of course, putting an emphasis on vaccine rollout, which I completely agree with, then I think it would give people a lot of hope. You know, one of the things that gave people hope last week was when the Prime Minister went out there and said, we're not going to be walking back from this national transition plan, get vaccinated so we can get back to a normalcy. Now, we've seen some state premiers walking back, and the Prime Minister was 100% right in going back and saying, and putting the heat on them and saying, no, we're not going to keep sacrificing people's lives and livelihoods so that premiers can postulate. It seems like, and you're referring to Mark McGowan there, he's very happy, and quite rightly, they're happy living in a COVID-free society. It's very different from the rest of Australia, but eventually, I mean, he's going to have to come to a decision about moving on. And what happens, Tim, once New South Wales and Victoria, it seems like we're both going to get to about 80% vaccinations at around about the same time. Would you like to see those two states just move on, regardless of what other states are doing? Well, I can't see how Victorians or New South Welshmen would tolerate other states dragging their feet and being the base for them not being able to get to some degree of normalcy in their lives. Now, if the other states want to go rogue, that's their choice. But they also need to be honest with their population that in human history, we have only ever defeated one strain of one virus. And so they're buying themselves time, but eventually reality will hit, and the decisions they're making at this present time lead them to ultimately give up the false pretense of being able to protect their populations, but they're only delaying tragically, and I say this as none of us want it, but the inevitable. So do you believe that, I mean, we'll be able to travel internationally perhaps by the end of the year from New South Wales and Victoria when we can't even travel to, Brisbane or Perth? I'm not going to make that agreement. I think it's more likely that will happen next year. But if WA wants to lock itself off, as an example, from the rest of, not just Australia, but the rest of the world, then yes, it's obviously logical that places like New Zealand, other countries with high vaccination rates and lower risk profiles will likely be connected to the eastern seaboard before they will. Well, I mean, there's another example, New Zealand too. It's under the gun at the moment from Delta. I mean, this is what can happen once one case gets into Perth or Brisbane. Then your whole COVID zero approach is gone. Well, none of us want COVID-19, but that unfortunately isn't the choice that we have. The choice we have is between how we manage the virus, limit its impact, increase the armour of the population. And so, of course, if you delay that process, then, of course, you buy yourself time. But tragically, you're not going to be able to buy yourself kind of a pass out of the reality and the inevitability of it.
All right, Tim, good to chat. Talk to you soon. Coming up, bizarre.